The Discourse starts right now with Cheryl Oates and Erica Barudis.
Welcome back to The Discourse, our final episode of 2025. We wanted to do something a little bit different today as we close out the year. We will, of course, talk about the latest developments, including what is becoming a series of MPs leaving the Conservative Party, leaving the math now materially changed in Parliament. We'll talk about the Liberal government's pretty unapologetic move toward the centre, and in Alberta, we'll look at the UCP's continued challenge with its own internal division. None of these developments are isolated. They are all symptoms of something a little bit deeper happening in our politics.
So yeah, today's conversation, we're going to go a little bit deeper. And so for all those people that love when I don't use facts and lead with feelings and emotions, buckle up, baby. This is what we're doing today. We're going to get into the heart of political differences, why disagreements, how it's hardened into distrust in so many places, and how polarization works, who it benefits, and what it costs. And with that, we've invited someone that has invited us onto his platform, the host of what I think is Canada's most successful, not just political show, but everyday news. Today, I talked more about the Oilers when we were on his show this morning than I think I ever have. And so we have Ryan Jespersen, the host of Real Talk, joining the conversation today.
Hey, guys, thank you for having me.
Welcome, Ryan.
What an honor. This is my Discourse debut.
Yeah. And we had thought oh, Brian could come on and sort of moderate our conversation like he does for his show. But then we thought, wouldn't it be more fun if you actually were, in the hot seat a little bit, participating in the conversation? So we are going to put some tough questions to you today about your own political allegiances and views.
All right, I'm ready for it.
Okay, so before we dive deep into current political structure, let's just set the stage with a recent political development which is the latest floor crosser to cross from the federal Conservatives to the federal Liberals, which is Michael Mah announcing he will sit with the governing caucus, leaving them one seat short of a majority government. Kind of beginning to see a little bit of a trend here. Two people cross the floor, one person leave the party. Lots to unpack in many ways around that topic. But before we get to that, Ryan, let's just start with your analysis of what do you think? What do you think when you see a floor crossing like this?
Well, I mean, we've talked about this candidly in past on Real Talk many times, and generally speaking, on principle, I'm not a huge fan of floor crossing. I think that it insults the electorate to a certain degree. I think especially within 6 months of a federal election, it kind of stinks. But at the same time, political parties are evolving beasts, and the political landscape is constantly changing. And there's the thrust and the parry of political strategizing that happens. There's the selfish, personal angle of politicians, I think, looking to preserve their own political futures or save their own political skin. And then I also think that there's the idea, which I'm sure that we'll explore here, that perhaps in some ways, floor crossers themselves may be led to believe, or may strongly believe themselves, that they're in a position to make a real impact. And if they're impressed by what they see in this scenario, by the leadership of Mark Carney, by brokering of deals or relationship or bridge building with certain provinces, including Alberta, which I've likened in past to peace in the Middle East, in the sense that I don't think a lot of people thought that could actually happen. An MOU signed between a Conservative provincial government in Alberta and a Liberal federal government, the passage of a budget, the future of the country, and perhaps a leadership deficit with their current party or their current leader. Maybe they've seen a lack of evolution or a lack of pivoting on behalf of Pierre Poilievre in this case. Then I think that maybe in some circumstances, floor crossings become not just a possibility, but almost inevitable. What makes this, as you identified, Cheryl, particularly interesting is it puts the Carney government within real striking distance, one more seat into majority territory, and then the entire thing, the entire conversation changes. Those are my quick hits off the top.
I was going to jump in.
As you were talking,
Yeah,
Erica made so many faces. Like, take us into your thought process there.
And by the way, Erica, let me give you, please, permission for you to interrupt and step all over my toes. You don't have to wait for me to finish talking.
No, I'm going to be so polite, just like I always am to Cheryl, and never interject and just make facial expressions. But I was also getting a cute photo of us for the gram, guys. So that's also why my face was moving around. I will say, so we talked about this, 5 hours ago on your show, Jespo. And it was like, I didn't know who Michael Mah was. And then we learned that he's like a brand new MP, which is different than even, Chris d'Entremont. same, I think it was the same thing. He wasn't elected. Those were both, I think, Liberal ridings. But in this case, my Twitter or my X has been blowing up with the fact that this guy went to the CPC Christmas party, took a gift from the gift exchange, didn't bring one, then goes and votes with them in the House. The House rises, and then he shows up to the Liberal Christmas party. I don't know, Ryan, when you look at this, not ever being inside baseball and politics, are you like, is this guy really that stupid? Like, what do you take from all the new happenings since we chatted this morning? I'm like, this is wild. This guy had 15 minutes of fame and now he just looks like a doofus.
Okay, so first things first, number one, I've got a good buddy, Jordan. His favorite word, diabolical. This is diabolical. And so the timeline, this is Mark Strahl that put out this timeline on Twitter. He says, here's the Michael Ma guide to floor crossing. Wednesday, attend Conservative caucus, participate in voluntary Secret Santa. Go to now, this is alleged, so I don't want to get sued by Michael Ma here.
These pictures now, I've seen people post them. The CPC
hang
staff
on.
is going crazy.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite part of the whole thing. This is even better. It's equal. It's equal to accepting a gift in the Secret Santa. By the way, that gift Secret Santa was from Kurt Holman. It was an Amazon Fire Stick. He says he wants it back. But not only did he benefit from the Secret Santa while not contributing to the Secret Santa, but allegedly, per Mark Strahl, Michael Ma left without paying at the Conservative Christmas party and said, quote, "I'll get you tomorrow." Well, he sure
liberal
did.
move.
He sure did get them tomorrow when he showed up on the Thursday now. So he gets a family photo Wednesday night with Pierre and Anita Polyev, him and his family. Then on the Thursday, votes with the Conservatives at 3:15, and then at 6 o'clock, crosses the floor and then goes to the Liberal Christmas party. Unbelievable. We do not have it confirmed in either direction whether or not he covered his tab at the Liberal Christmas party, but I suspect people were lining up to buy him a beer.
These allegations have not been proven.
They have not been tested nor proven in court.
But
it's on
okay,
X,
so
that's it.
I saw you guys in the group chat talking about this, and I know I can see why you're fired up, Erica, because it's your party and you already have a reason to dislike him for crossing the floor. I see your points, Ryan. I really, personally do not care, and I don't think that anyone anywhere cares. like even the people in his riding, do you think they're like, "Did you hear?" Like, can you imagine someone over Christmas dinner
the guy,
being like, "Did
the guy
you
that
hear?"
ran against him.
Did you?
Go ahead,
But
sorry.
I'm thinking of regular people. I'm not talking about politicians. I'm talking about people going home to see their families, sitting around the Christmas table. We're talking about salient things in politics, saying, "Oh my God, did you hear that guy that crossed the floor took a Secret Santa gift and didn't give one?" I don't think anybody's talking about that. And so
No, that's something that everyone can relate to.
I know,
Everyone
but
has
no
that
one
person in their
cares.
workplace.
No one cares.
Well, it's a character test.
Maybe.
Well, so the guy that ran against him, so there was a Liberal incumbent. He got removed or some drama happened. This other guy gets put in and he just did this long X post about how disappointed he is. All of this, I literally just saw it right before we jumped on. And so it's actually kind of interesting because he only lost, or he was 50% to 47% of the vote. Is he really going to be welcomed by the Liberals? I'm sure the Conservatives that voted for him ain't going to be too happy. This morning, I said he's pulling a Chris D'Entremont. He's going to walk home and get in a lot of trouble. I think the people at Christmas, I disagree, Cheryl, are going to be talking about this because all sides now are made aware of it.
But this is okay.
comedic.
Just to make this just a little bit more serious for a second. This is where people in political bubbles sort of lose the plot. Is to say that we really believe that people who are outside of the political circle are going to go home on their Christmas break and talk about the MP that crossed the floor that didn't give a Secret Santa gift. No, they're going to talk about access to healthcare. They're going to talk about whether they can afford their groceries. They're going to talk about whether Christmas was tough or easy this year. They're not going to talk about whether an MP that is completely removed from their reality paid for his past the Conservative Christmas party. It's just that's not a real thing in most people's lives.
Do you think they'll talk about the floor crossing at all, though? Do you think...
I
Because
think
it's
floor
close to a
crossing is
majority,
more
right?
salient.
This
Yeah.
is... Okay. Because I was this makes it really close. As we talked, it's one seat from forming majority, which, I mean, it would be really newsworthy if it was the seat that formed majority that might make sure that it's talked at the Christmas table. But do you think that resonates with normal people, not the three of us on a panel?
I think it's much more salient to say, is the power about to shift to the governing party, to say we have a much more stable 4-year majority in power. Like that is consequential for Canadians. It means the government can do a lot more. It means that we're not going to an election in the spring, or we're less likely to go to an election in the spring. I think that's more salient. Someone's like internal Secret Santa drama, like I barely care and I'm in the political universe.
Hey, but you said stable. So I want to get both of your takes on like the stability. Does this actually offer stability to Canadians? I mean, they're not at a majority yet. Do you think it's inevitable? What does that mean for the political theater that we live in? For like, is it going to be an election in the spring? Are we going to be back at the doors? Like, what do you guys think this actually is foreshadowing, if anything?
I would just be blown away if wheels weren't in motion, and I'm not the first to suggest this. Cheryl, you prognosticated about this exact thing on our December 12th episode of Real Talk, which people can find on YouTube and wherever they get their podcasts. But obviously, conversations are happening with multiple conservative MPs and other MPs, I'm sure. And I think that those conversations have been continuing, and we're hearing the stories of the ones that are either past that point of making a decision. Matt Genereux would be an example with his resignation, his soft resignation, kind of a soft exit.
Lame duck till April.
Yeah, maybe lame duck till April. Word on the street,
not.
by the way, is word on the street is that Genereux was surprised by that spring announcement from Pierre Poilievre. It sounds like he was ready to leave quite a bit sooner than that. But then you've got Chris D'Entremont, you've got this Michael Maas situation. Erica's laughing. I can't wait to hear why, but I guarantee that obviously, and I know that both of you, I'm sure, would feel the same way, is that right now you're looking at the next MP to make a move alters the entire political landscape in the country and makes Canadian political history and changes the status of this government. And that's a huge deal, not a decision to be taken lightly, but if there's anybody that's on the fence that's a conservative MP that maybe doesn't align 100% with Pierre Poilievre, or maybe hasn't since the beginning, maybe they don't feel like they have a lot to lose. Maybe, quite frankly, I think a lot of these people, folks that would even consider folks that would accept a phone call or a dinner invitation to meet with Mark Carney in the dead of night in cloak and dagger style, are maybe already looking at this like they may have already gone through their last election. Like they may kind of be done. They may feel done with the Conservative Party. They may feel done with federal politics. And now there's an opportunity for them to impact change in what they think might be a positive direction for their own constituents or for Canadians. And so, yeah, I mean, I look at this as though I'm not looking at a spring. I don't pretend I'm in the PMO, that I'm not looking to a spring election at all. I'm just not looking forward. I'm curious to see when the next shoe drops.
I mean, Mark Carney, I would say, has governed from the beginning as someone who is here for a short time, not a long time. He doesn't need, this is not a stepping stone in his long-term career trajectory. Like, this was a goal of his. He comes in, he does something transformative, and he gets out. Like, that's how I've always seen his position as prime minister. But I do think that if he, in the spring, or we come back from Christmas break, and he has a majority government, it does fundamentally change the position that the Liberals are taking and how they are governing in Canada. Like, if you just take the budget, for example, there was so much in that budget that was intended to make it difficult for Conservatives or New Democrats to vote against it. That was enticing specific MPs in their ridings with specific funding, so it would be difficult for them to not vote against it. If they are majority government, they don't need to do any of that. They have the votes to pass the budget. They can just do what they want, and they don't have to think about how they find consensus along the way. And that's true for everything. That's true for everything they do, not just confidence votes. And so their ability to govern and their ability to move things forward, even if the other parties disagree with them, is just so much strengthened by having one more MP that is firmly in their camp. And I do think that changes the Liberals' positioning in the path forward.
You said that he's here for a good time, not a long time. And then you talked about, what he's been doing. Do you, because you're on the left of things, is it weird to see the Liberals kind of take back liberalism and move away from the NDP? Is that what Mark Carney's legacy is going to be? Is it a pipeline? Do you think he's only here for one term? Can you maybe dig a little bit deeper? And then the ideological piece of, does this create space for the NDP to rebrand because he's not Justin Trudeau jumping in, eating Jagmeet's lunch?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, I think they have repositioned to a place that is palatable across the board for many Canadians. They're firmly, center, right of center now. And even though our society is so deeply polarized right now, I think a lot of people, given the current climate, given the threat from the United States, could look at the options and say, Mark Carney is the best guy for this job right now. I think that is why he's in the position that he's in. In terms of the Liberals' movement to what I would say is a much different ideological point on the spectrum than Justin Trudeau governed from, it opens up a huge flank for the NDP. And the NDP don't even have to be like, in the past, if you wanted to be left of Justin Trudeau, you had to be like quite radically left. Now the NDP can position themselves as a real credible progressive alternative because there isn't one outside of them in Canada right now. But that will come down, in my mind, to who the leader of the party is going forward, whether we actually take that position or not.
Who wins?
We'll find out in March, Erica.
But who do you think? Both of you.
Here's the visitor's comment. If you were to stop 100 Canadians on the street and say $1 million, if you can name every candidate in the federal NDP leadership race, how many Canadians would be winning $1 million? Right? Or if you, or not, and I'm not trying to be a jerk at all. I mean, I think Canada benefits when there's strong political opposition and a good choice across the political spectrum. I'd hope that Canada doesn't evolve into a two-party system. I mean, it arguably is that right now, but even if you stop the average person and said, name 2 people in the federal NDP leadership race. And I just think, and I'm not dunking on the NDP at all, but I just think that's like part of the problem is that there's really no name recognition. I don't think there's this perception, not to say there aren't competent MPs and like people that are committed to politics in the whole 9 yards, not political experience or anything, but like who's really making an impact either in their own riding or across the country, who's really sort of grabbed everyone's attention and who is out there to convince people that they have the dynamism and the vision and the organizing power and the fundraising heft to get the party out of financial trouble and back into relevance. And like, sorry to make, you're going to roll your eyes, Cheryl, because it's like the obvious question,
won't.
but like, well, like who's the next Jack Layton, right?
Yeah.
Who's the next Jack Layton?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me because I'm obviously like deeply into the party and understand there's, just like the UCPS factions, the NDPS factions too. I think there are values that tie those factions together, and those values are especially strong in the NDP. And I'm always surprised that I think the NDP is very misunderstood, both in Alberta, at a provincial section level and at a federal level. I'd be interested to see, like, what do you guys think the NDP is? Like, what do you think the NDP stands for?
I mean, I think like speaking candidly and off the cuff and just like, what comes to mind personally, like, I sort of see the end. And again, this is not Rachel. So we're talking federal NDP.
Mhm.
This is not Rachel Notley's legacy. It would not be accurate when applied to Rachel Notley. But I sort of see it as like, I'm sort of like the LEAP manifesto is like, keep the rest of the oil in the ground, like free farm. And this is not all bad stuff. Free pharmacare, free dental care. They've got the backs of lower income Canadians, of working Canadians, of the blue collar Canadians. They're there to hold sort of capitalism to account. That's kind of my general impression of and again, like I'm just taking these tiny little focused in talking points. Obviously it represents much more than that, but the idea of being like the average person's party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that.
Social justice warriors is what I
Also
always
true.
think. Like, but like leading with the social, to Ryan's point, like anti-capitalism, pro-union. I mean, when you look at fundamentally what the left stands for, it's collective versus individual, which is on the right? Like individualism is kind of the fundamental belief. And probably if we're getting into the deeper side of where we truly how we are connected to our party, Cheryl, I think we've talked about this, is like the collective good. What is in the best interest? So you've got to pick up the lowest individual and carry them along, right? Pick up the most vulnerable, where on the right, it's more everyone's given the opportunity, fair opportunity. It's what you do with it. And I think that that's where I look at the NDP as being very much focused on let's help the most in need at whatever cost, which usually equals a lot of tax dollars or taking from the wealthy to give to the poor, the Robin Hood type of strategy. A lot of wokeism as of recent, but I think a lot of, and like cancel culture and stuff, like I think that is more, I don't know if it's swinging back, but I think for a while there was a lot of like, we love inclusion, but only if it agrees with us, is some of the negative side I've seen from the left personally and just across the board. I'm sure maybe you have experiences from the right with that. I don't know. But when I think of the NDP, I very much think of like the social welfare and union parading. Parading. I was going to say protesting. But
Okay,
I think
this
we've done
is
a lot of
kind
that
of fun.
from all sides lately.
Should we do hot takes?
I think that you need to describe now.
What is?
How you think?
And we were talking federal, right? Like I do think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I actually like what Erica said about the collective versus the individual is really where my values come from. Like as a society, I want everyone to do well. That is just like at the core of my value system is I don't want to just like I worked hard so I'm going to do well. I want everybody to do well because I don't think that there is a world where everybody gets a fair opportunity or a fair first start or we're all starting from the same place. And so the collective is at the core of my value system and that's why I care about things like healthcare and education and having a public system that supports that opportunity for everybody. I will say there have been many occasions where the federal party doesn't necessarily like exactly align with my values because I think that their views on economy versus environment haven't been reflective of the economic reality in Alberta. So specifically, like, can't be the party. Rachel Notley said this a million times when she was premier. You cannot be the party of working people and then say all of these working people's jobs don't matter because we don't like pipelines. Like, this is the core of our economy in Alberta. And so you cannot be a real credible alternative in Alberta and say, just ideologically, we don't like oil. And so that core of my value system is in line with the federal party, but I would love to see it just take a more practical approach to the economic questions.
Is okay. So there's a lot of things that I'd love to know like where you sit because I would say, yes, I understand the collective, but it's like, oh, let's do all of these things, but not in my backyard, or let's help all these people, but I don't want to, right? Like I look at, say, refugees or immigration or homeless, and it's like, yeah, but I don't want it. I want us as a society to take care of it. And I feel like there's maybe not then that individual ownership. Like the time I joked that you should have homeless people come and stay in like you should share your sauna with them. Uh, because I was like, well, that is truly like if you wanted to help those people, you'd let them just use your sauna in the true idea of collectivism.
Okay,
This person needs to
please
warm up and give a sauna.
comment section, please take this away.
Cheryl has a sauna, just in case you're wondering. Anyways, but I'm just like, when I think of like how we actually help people, like I think that on the left, sometimes I think they say all these wonderful things about helping society, but like, are they really going to do it? And what is the price tag for that? And so that's something I always wonder, especially when you, as a more of an Alberta NDP, I would say, how do you manage that because you understand the economic case? And so it's like really nice to do all those things, but at what cost?
Okay, so two things. And then, Ryan, happy to have you weigh in as the non deeply partisan person.
Mm-hmm. Do
But
you have a sauna,
okay,
right?
so
I have a hot tub.
So there you go. Okay, so two things. One is there is a difference between ensuring that every person, no matter where they come from or how much money they make or what their social standing is, has access to fundamental public services like healthcare, like education, like, the things that help us have a good life and have a good quality of life, a roof over their head. There's a difference between making sure that everyone has access to those and like making sure everyone has a sauna. Like there's a difference between those things. I'm talking about like fundamental quality. No, but I'm using it to illustrate the point.
I never got an invite.
Like it's okay in my mind. You work really hard. You become incredibly successful. You have nice things. Not everybody deserves to have the really nice things that you have. That's okay. I'm just saying that everyone as a basic level should have access to the things that are fundamentally part of quality of life. And then the second thing I would say is that part of my criticism of my own party is that sometimes we let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And we say that we have this idea of what the world should be. And it's like an altruistic, here's what would happen if everything was perfect and everyone had access to everything and everyone was equal. And we had, great economy and no climate change and jobs for everybody. Like we have this, we set these ideals for ourselves and then say that we failed if we make progress but fall short of that ideal. And that's just not like, I think progress is progress. And this is the real world that we live in. And if you want to be a governing party, you have to accept that progress is progress and not say that everything short of that is failure, because otherwise you put yourself into a category of being a party of protest forever because nothing will ever be perfect.
As I'm listening to both of you talk, I'm thinking of how the bigger picture, the general premise of what you're discussing. And I'm a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B here, but this is what formatively has shaped my opinion, and what's proven to be, I guess, a bit of a controversial opinion on things like healthcare delivery and education. And, I'll take points. I don't want to get too into the muck and mire on it, but I would say that with education. And for example, like I'm a product of both private and public education through the course of my career in school. It's a weird way to refer to it. We don't really call it a school career, but I've seen both systems and I've benefited from both systems. And I've heard, my upbringing was in a private school, and I remember hearing the parents, not always, but lament the fact that, they weren't getting like the tax dollars should follow the student, and that should fund private schools. And I remember always seeing sort of private schools as the underdog, like as an impressionable child, we were the underdog because we don't get the full funding that everybody else gets. And it was faith-based private schooling. And then, you mature, and I felt like I was big fish, small pond. I asked my parents if I could go to public high school. They obliged. I think I flourished in public high school. I'm a big supporter of public education, but not at the, I'm also a supporter of people's right to choose private education and to raise their children how they see fit. And so that's there's nuance in everything, but I do think, and I recognize when people, gosh, Alberta's teachers had a national megaphone in unfortunate circumstances through that teacher strike to remind everybody about the value of public education. And I have a huge respect for public education. My son attends a public school by choice, by our choice, his parents' choice. But also I can sort of see it from kind of both angles. And I don't believe that there shouldn't be private schools. And I don't believe that it's fair or equitable for private schooling families to see 0% of their tax dollars go to their kids' school. So that's nuance there. And on the healthcare front, and here's where it gets even more controversial, I think. But we've looked at what we're dumping, like in Alberta, what this year, you guys, like off the top of my head, 22 to 25 billion
or something.
28, like, okay, like it's like the biggest line item in our budget. And a shout out to all of the healthcare providers out there who do an amazing job, and they work and they're dealing with stress and burnout and all the things. It's not working. It's working on an individual level. We have some of the best surgeons in the world. Our family doctors are incredible. Our nurses are amazing, but like the wait times are brutal, and like surgical wait times, MRIs take 18 months sometimes. And we have to be able to look at that and say, there's got to be a better way to do it. I just have a hard time believing that there is absolutely no way that dual delivery or private providers or those sorts of things couldn't step up and carry some of that burden, well regulated, et cetera. And the question comes down to whether or not people trust the health ministry, whether or not they trust the government, whether or not they trust accountability and transparency and reporting, a government's willingness to walk things back if the policy doesn't work. But I remember in particular, and you'll remember this, Cheryl, it was when Sarah Hoffman was NDP health minister. And I remember there was something around, you'll remember more details than me, but it was like, oh, they were like looking at the laundry contracts and like, oh my gosh, or maybe it was after when she was health critic. Maybe it was when Kenny was in, and they were like, oh, they were going to hand the hospital laundry services to a private provider. Well, if they can do it better and it costs less, then why the hell shouldn't we? And like now we're protecting all, like, no offense to people working in laundromats, but like now we're like protecting the public laundry workers because we can't look at ways to be more cost. You know what I'm saying? And so I recognize 100% it is absolutely true that someone with less means should not be denied healthcare services or bumped to the back of the list. And I don't believe that in every circumstance that people with means should skyrocket to the front of the list. And that's not what Canada's all about. It's not what our healthcare system has been built on. Tommy Douglas, widely regarded as one of the greatest Canadians of all time for his contributions to that. But at the same time, the world also works in certain ways where, people with means oftentimes have advantages in front of them. You can't, as a politician, ever say that. Mm-hmm. But I also think that doesn't mean that we can't look to private markets or to the capitalist model in some circumstances and say, where can we find efficiencies?
So Bill 14, which addresses this, I think it's Bill 14, not 11, right? Bill 14. Is the healthcare
14
one?
Is where you can't name your
Sorry, it is Bill 11.
Bill 9.
Oh,
Wasn't it
okay.
9?
One of
No,
the bills.
2 was back to school.
No, it was
9 was
11.
the trans laws. 11 was the doctors. 14 is the you can't call yourself progressives. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, right. We'll not talk about that today. Let's talk about Bill 11, which had a bunch of different things in it, but dual practice was one of them. So as an individual that's not hyper-partisan, accesses healthcare, I would assume, has a young family. How did you feel about the dual practice and some of the arguments that were made by both sides?
Yeah. I'm also the son of a physician, and I grew up doing billing and cleaning and filing for my dad and all that kind of stuff. I'm also the son of a teacher, by the way. My mom's a teacher. So, healthcare and education were always paramount around our family dinner table. My parents weren't, I say they weren't overtly political, but Jason Kenney's fundraisers used to happen in our kitchen. So I guess maybe we were more political than I realized. I always say to people, it's like we had a Jason Kenney lawn sign in Calgary Southeast, but it was like the 4-by-6-foot lawn signs. Like it was like the big ones.
Yeah.
That's pretty political.
So yeah, I guess I did
Yeah.
grow up in a political household. I never realized it as a kid how political it maybe was, but I just remember hearing. And my thought on dual delivery is like, I believe that, surgeries is a good example here because the government has said governments have broken their word in the past. They'll break their word again. So we'll see how this plays out. But I spoke with Minister Adriana LaGrange just a few episodes ago. People can check that out. And she says, listen, like family doctors, this isn't going to impact them. Critical like cancer surgeries, oncologists, it's not going to impact them. They're talking about things like elective surgeries. Now, we've also heard from surgeons that have written into the show and said elective doesn't mean they're not necessary, just means they're not emergencies. An elective surgery could be like a knee replacement or a hip replacement. It still matters. But surgeons have said, listen, before we start moving to like real like true private delivery, like Alberta Surgical Group, ASG, right by the Edmonton airport there, there's a lot of surgeons that are doing double duty. So they'll be at, for example, here's a regional reference, but in downtown Edmonton at the Royal Alexandra Hospital, they'll be there like 2 or 3 days, and then they'll go do 2 days at ASG. They're making more money at ASG because they're getting paid at sort of, they don't call it this, but like an appearance fee, right? So they'll get like $1,000 to show up, and then they'll get paid what they would normally get paid, same as the Alex. So it makes more sense to them. Now, the reason why they're available to go to ASG is because they don't have, for example, anesthesiology services available at the Royal Alex. So you've got ORs that are sitting empty. And this is the case across the province. We'll hear from doctors, surgeons, nurses all the time that'll say, we're not running it efficiently. It doesn't make sense. We're not properly staffed in certain areas. And as a result, I think that the conversation has become somewhat skewed. If the ORs were packed, at all of our hospitals for so-called public delivery or normal delivery as we would understand it, then it's maybe a bit of a different conversation. But I'm not against the idea of incentivizing medicine for, I mean, it's possible. I mean, family doctors have been entrepreneurs since inception, right? They're also small business people. They're running their practice. They have overhead. They pay their nurses. They do all, they negotiate their leases. And I don't think that it's a bad thing, especially when you have a family doctor crunch, or maybe you're trying, a province like Alberta, a prosperous province that's trying to attract top talent, to incentivize that and to say to surgeons around the world, literally, you can do really well here. And if you're the best in class, then we'd really like to have you.
I am just fighting the urge right now not to go like deep into the two-tier healthcare discussion because it just ends up like we have done it multiple times now on our show and it's gone around and around. But maybe we could take it to like an ideological place, which for me is like, okay, so I think there is lots of logic in the arguments that you just made, Ryan. But for me, like overall, I value access to public healthcare, good quality public healthcare in my community so much that like from an ideological perspective, every time we chip away at that, every time we contract out the laundry services and then we contract out the catering and then we contract out whatever in the hospital, and then we start contracting out our surgeries, this is a slippery slope that leads to an American system. And I think Medicare is the gem of Canada. We are so lucky that we have access to Medicare, but it's been whittled away. It's been whittled away. It's been whittled away. The trust and the support of the public healthcare system has been whittled away to a point that it is like only a part of what it once was, even like say like 10, 15 years ago. And so, yes, you can make the case like maybe we'll see like little gains. Maybe we'll see more people getting their knees replaced, but there will be impacts in the public system. And those impacts will be really, really hard to undo, even if there's a change of power.
Well, and Cheryl, like sorry, Erica, but this will frustrate your audience because I'm going to say, I agree with everything you're saying. And they're going to say, well, pick a side, Jespo, like pick a side. But my thing is like, let me say this. So you said 15 minutes ago that around holiday dinner tables, like nobody's going to be, and in large part, I agree with you. Nobody knows who Chris Dontremont is. No, most people couldn't even, I had a guy come up. I thought he was a really sharp guy. He still is. But like just the other day came up to me and he was like, who's the again? And I was like, oh my gosh, buddy. Like, okay. So the average person may not be paying close attention to the minutia. I do agree with you. But you talked about how it's personal. You said people around holiday dinner tables are going to be saying like, were we able to buy the kids Christmas gifts this year? Or like, do we have a job in February? Kind of idea, right? And I would say the same thing. Like somebody close to me, she hasn't given me permission to talk about her circumstance, so I'll leave it vague, but somebody very close to me was dealing with a very serious GI issue, like something to do that was affecting her daily health and her sense of well-being. Something was wrong. Something is wrong inside of her. And her family doctor's been trying everything. They've been trying everything. And then they needed, an MRI and some other stuff. And again, like the wait list that she was, given like basically 18 months. And they said, or it's like whatever it was, $1,700 or whatever to go get it done. She's not wealthy. They're a middle-class family. She's a public servant. It's a sacrifice for them, but it was doable. It was doable. They paid the $17, got the MRI. She got her result. Like, everybody's got hot ideological takes on all this kind of stuff until it really hits home.
Yeah.
And then you're forced to make a decision, or you're provided with an option. And if it's going to change the course of your life and your quality of life, then people's opinions might change.
Yeah, and I know you want to get in, Erica, but I agree with that. Like, I wouldn't fault at this point in Alberta's healthcare system for someone that, is facing that, and when you're worried about a health issue, personal health issue, it takes over your entire life. It is like the stress
Totally.
that you wake up with. It's the stress that you go to bed with. You're thinking about the implications for your family. If at this point in Alberta's healthcare system, even if you are a big public sector proponent, if you take that leap and go get your public or privately, how could I fault you for that? Like, of course, your health and your family's health should come first. My point is that you shouldn't have to do that. Like, it shouldn't be an 18-month wait list.
Yeah.
And if we stopped eating away and eating away and eating away at the public healthcare system, people wouldn't have to look for private options just to get the basic diagnostic tests they need.
And this is interesting because I think regardless of your ideology, I'd also agree. I wish the public system worked better for people. And this is not just an Alberta specific case. I mean, we're actually middle of the pile when it comes, or I think Saskatchewan and Alberta have actually moved up, but like across Canada, this is an issue. And so regardless, I think where maybe Ryan and I are coming from, or people that are like, let's try it, is because I would say that the public system is broken. And it's not working. Actually, shout out to our friend, Dr. Shazma Mathani, because after she listened to and she wants to be friends with Cheryl, she's like, I'm going to get along with Cheryl so much better. And I was like, great, we'll introduce you. But she recommended, I just checked it out, Health for All by Jane Philpott, who's the former Minister of Health, worked at Queen's, doctor. Anyways, do you have it?
No, I'm just showing you. She's on my screen as we're talking. How crazy is that? This is
so
our holiday
creepy.
reel from our Christmas party.
She's
anyway,
listening.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she said you should read this. And I'm almost done the book. The clinical part is what she's talking about in her book. And I found it interesting because I was like, I agree with all this. It is a little bit idealistic. It's like that we have to fix primary care in our country is the biggest thing. And I think Cheryl and I have talked about this and agree with it. The difference is there's lots of implications about how we actually do that. And it is a full 180 or like full reform to our entire healthcare system is how this woman, who I find her very intelligent, has been in the political and the medical realm, is saying is really kind of her proposal on how we do this. And it's like a primary care networks in the true sense. And she's a liberal, but like also speaks, I'd say, even more progressive in some of her approaches. But where I'm going is I think it needs a whole overhaul for our public system to actually work the way that you want it to, Cheryl. And where I sit, I'm like, I wish this was the case. I don't think anyone realized our population growth, the challenges with health, baby boomers, all of these things that we're now dealing with. Doctors not working full time, right? Them just choosing not to work like my dad and probably your dad, Ryan, worked, which was I like never saw him as a family physician and when he wasn't at clinic, he was at the emergency. And so very different lifestyles, I think, from physicians too, but it would be an overhaul, no fee for service. It is a full holistic health approach, which I don't think the AMA, from what I've seen, would maybe agree with, right? And so anyways, I'm going to talk to Shazma over wine about this book, but I just wanted to say, like, I think that the interesting thing is regardless of ideology or bias, we all wish the system worked. I think we're just at a place where I'm like, I'll try anything at this point to fix this damn thing. And I don't think throwing money at a problem is going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes problems require money, but that doesn't mean that money at every problem will solve it, right? And I think, everything does come back to politics, like it or not. And what you have in Alberta you may have the average civilian may look at this and say, okay, well, the NDP option on this is, and again, this is, I'm saying this would be the person's perception, but the NDP ideology on this, the Nenshi camp would be inflexible on things like private delivery or alternative approaches. And then there's a sort of a confidence crisis with Daniel Smith's Conservatives, where people will feel like, well, this is all means to an end, right? To defund public education, defund public healthcare, open the door for private delivery, for profit, friends of the government, procurement scandals and everything else. And at the end of the day, like, who loses most, it's the public. And especially when they don't feel like maybe there's a political option there that could take the measured approach that the three of us are taking here on the discourse.
I just want to ask one question because I feel like our listeners are going to be like, you didn't ask. Ryan, do you have a political ideology? Like, I know, like, journalists are supposed to say that they're neutral, but do you?
I always jump in. I say I'm not a journalist. I'm a talk show host.
Yeah, I was going to say, like,
there's a big difference.
You're more editorial, obviously, than like a journalist working for a major media outlet. But do you have a party?
Not currently. No, I've publicly said it many times, is I identify with the description of progressive conservative. That's something that I always have felt comfortable with. But then I've been told by many people that they don't believe that that's possible. The whole idea of like, so Erica included, fiscally conservative, socially liberal, and everyone's like, that's impossible. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that it is, and I. Sure, there was some corruption and some entitlement. Sure. Oh, sure. But generally speaking, with the exception, and again, I also believe that you have to evaluate people's positions and comments and statements on the record and voting records and the like, according to the time that they were in. Because I know that everyone will say, like, Tommy Douglas, some hero, like, voted for eugenics, or like, Ralph Klein. Like, when people mention his name, the notwithstanding clause on marriage equality was disgraceful. And these things are true in 2025. You also have to recognize that, like, through time, that obviously people's convictions and our understanding and our awareness and our empathy has evolved. But I always sort of felt like, through that era of, like, I think of like Ed Stelmach and like Dave Hancock and like, I don't know, just premiers like Peter Lougheed, for that matter. Don Getty may not have been the strongest premier, but he was always, I think, respected. Those are kind of premiers that was my coming up, and so, and I would say, like, I always sort of like, I think it was just his baritone voice, but I was always a big Brian Mulroney fan. I could never figure out how he kind of lost the plot and drove that party into the ditch, but for Kim Campbell to clean up. But yeah, to answer your question in 1,000 sentences, that's it.
Okay, so I call Ryan PC pretend conservative. That's why I was laughing when he's like, I identify as a PC. If an election were to be held today, Ryan.
Hang on a second, though. Hang on a second. I am sticking my neck out there on your show talking about private healthcare, private education.
Yeah.
We talked on my show after you guys were on today. I talked about a flat sales tax, a flat income tax with a sales tax on top. Like, come on. I mean, the conservative purity test, honestly, to me, is one of the biggest reasons why we haven't seen a conservative prime minister in the last 4 federal elections. These purity tests are insane.
Mm-hmm. And they exist everywhere. Well, not the liberals.
Yeah,
they exist with the conservatives and with the New Democrats.
But I'm talking about, like, and I don't feel like, and I don't, I'm not a member of the Alberta NDP nor the UCP, and I'm not a member of the federal Liberals nor the federal Conservatives. But it's kind of funny. It's because, like, when you talk about conservative, it's like, and again, social media is not real life, but people are like basically like, we don't want you. Like, it's kind of like
so polarizing.
Right. So what is it about that? I think that one thing that bothers me is that people think, like, I even know that the brand and the word conservative has a stigma to it. That, like, remember going through the naming of the party, right? Or like when those were getting batted around, is the word conservative like a bad word,
a dirty
to
word,
some? Yeah. And so how do you guys feel like about
what were a couple of really good names that hit the cutting room floor?
I wasn't in those discussions. It was before my time. I just know the aftermath.
They might have to save them.
But there was a lot. So I think I said this before, but like, it wasn't United Conservative Party wasn't the first choice. It went through, and like the chief electoral officer, when the party was registering, was like, nope, that's too similar. Nope, that's this. Ironically, not the case for the new Progressive Party until the UCP had to step in and say, no. But it was interesting because we actually lived that experience when the party was deciding their name. I mean, who decides the acronym UCP? Does anyone else?
Not a marketing person.
Like, no, yeah. Like, I'm always like, oh. Anyways, but what do you guys think of, like, the term conservative or the ideology versus political parties? Because those are very different too, if you're really getting into it.
I mean, for me,
what do you guys think a conservative is?
Comes down to, like, I mean, part of it is just shaped by, like, what I believe the values of the party are, which is kind of what you said earlier, like the individual versus the collective. That goes against my personal values, so that, it's not the party for me. But in my political experience, and I know this will make some people mad, in my political experience, I believe that the Conservatives put winning ahead of almost anything. And that sours my opinion of both political sections and of federal sections, that I believe that even if they have ideology, even if they're committed to something, if it stands in the way of power, they're willing to change it and they're willing to throw people under the bus along the way to get it. And that is what has soured my opinion of conservatives.
So, have you met the Wild Rose? Because they definitely were going to do anything to stand up for their values and beliefs. I find that interesting. I want to know, like, what do you think they compromised? Like, what values do you think that maybe they held that they compromised that
Well,
was in
like,
the
let's
name
just
of
look at
winning or
like
power?
broad right now. Like, let's just look at the broad spectrum. Like, what is the UCP focused on right now? This was a session focused on the UCP staying in power, the UCP protecting themselves from court challenges, the UCP pushing ideas that make their base happy. This was not a session where they came in and said, what are the biggest issues facing Alberta today and how can we make life better for Albertans? Which, that is, again, altruistic. That's like, what we all wish that politics could be. But the UCP did the opposite of that in this session. And that sort of feeds that sentiment I have about it being about the party and the politics more than it is about doing what's best for the majority of Albertans.
What if I said, because I want to get Ryan's take, but what if I said, I don't think the UCP is the ideology of conservatism? Would you agree?
Yeah.
Do I agree?
Either of you. Yeah.
Yeah, we had an interesting, consider the source, okay? But Naheed Nenshi, Alberta NDP leader, was on our show just the other day and basically said that there's nothing conservative about the UCP. Now, obviously, he wants to see the UCP crash and burn.
Mhm.
The bigger of a disaster, the better for him. So consider the source. But I do know that there's many, many conservatives who obviously believe, I don't need to explain it to this audience. You obviously have a very educated audience, the two of you, but small government and sort of, like efficiencies and business friendly sort of, policies to spur the economy and et cetera, like all that kind of stuff. The idea of like staying out of people's bedrooms and staying out of people's homes. And, even just I asked Danielle Smith about this on the 9th of December. Like it was by way of an audience question. A gal named Allison wrote in. It was like, how do you square your commitment to parents' rights while interfering with doctors' decisions on puberty blockers? Like it makes absolutely no sense at all. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that the people's understanding of what conservative represents has been polluted, but like there's only one group to blame for that, and that's conservatives. So, I don't know. I mean, I lament, to be honest with you, it sucks. Like it stings. I don't have any loyalty to any federal or provincial political party, let alone a conservative party. But to see the word conservative now be associated with like anti-science, anti-expert, anti-establishment, anti-institution, anti-confederation, anti-courts, anti-post-second, like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, it's like, I don't know many respectable conservatives that would be thrilled with that being like, if there's a word cloud around conservative and all these words are popping up, like, I don't know I know some people who would be proud of that, but not your mainstream urban voter.
And I mean, it's hard because, like, of course, like, and I want to make sure that I say this too, because what I just said was kind of harsh about conservatives. There's so many good conservatives. There's so many good conservatives. But obviously, politics is it's a contrast sport. Like, your job is to show how different and how much better you are than the other side. And unfortunately, in this really politically divisive world, that means playing up the pieces of the conservative side that are not always that nice. Like, that's where the contrast lies. And for the people in that party, you either have the choice to lean into those things and dig your heels in and defend them, or you have the choice to sort of like back off and disassociate. That's not just for the conservatives. Of course, that's for every party. But just to say, like, there are obviously tons of good people in that party. That's just why I think the word conservative and the reputation around it has changed so dramatically over the course of the last few years.
And I would say the same thing about the word progressive, by the way. No, I'm sorry. It's your show.
No,
but I would say the same.
They stole it from us.
I mean, I could go on the same rant about progressives and the virtue signaling and the ridiculousness and and like 100%. I can equally chastise both sides, which I guess is part of my skill set and maybe why I'm here today.
Yeah. So talk more about how you hate the progressive side, Ryan. No, I'm just kidding. But it's interesting because like we did talk. Do you see that same thing, Cheryl? Because I do look at the federal NDP different than the Alberta NDP. You talked about the provincial UCP. Do you see that same application for the federal conservatives, or do you think they've kind of picked their lane? Because I do see our two parties. Like, I'm a member of both. They are very different in their tactics. And Ryan, that's why I'm a conservative, exactly what you said. But I'm a text box, like fit in my little box, conservative. probably closer to more of a Jason Kenney conservative, where it's like you just play in your sandbox. And that's what I wish that the governments, or and if the CPC becomes government, when they do, that would play in that box, as opposed to a lot of this other stuff that you guys are talking about.
But you're basically explaining how every person, no matter how politically active you are in Canada, how every person feels. Like there will never be a perfect party for anyone,
Mm-hmm.
even for the leaders of the party, because you have to be able to bring a coalition along with you. You align with the party that you are most closely, like your values most closely align with. And that will almost always mean there is part of the party that you don't align with, because that's just like, nothing's perfect. And so I don't think there's anyone in any party that is like, this is exactly the place for me.
So, Ryan, when you vote, does the leader really matter to you because you don't have this party allegiance? And Cheryl, kind of the same question, because I know that you've said, I've seen you shift even with the NDP. I'm just a conservative. It doesn't really, like, to me, I don't care who the leader is as much as this is my party. So I want to get your take, Ryan, on like first how you vote. Like, do you vote on a leader? Is it a personality and how they're running that organization or their institution? And Cheryl, like how do you balance that being a more of an Alberta NDP versus federal, and what does that mean based on who wins the federal one?
Yeah, for me, I vote. I don't have a specific formula. I would say that for me, obviously, party factors in, and a big choice on party. And I would say that's the current state of that party. I've voted for the federal Conservatives, and I have voted for the federal Liberals. I have voted for the Progressive Conservatives, and I have voted for the Alberta NDP. So, and I've never voted for the UCP.
What years?
I don't know that. I don't know that I've ever gone on the record. I don't know that I've ever gone on the record with this.
In 2015, who did you vote for?
In 2015, I voted. I'm not going to share.
So close, guys. So close.
Yeah, you had me so close. Yeah, no, and so I would say that obviously I evaluate based on party and who that party's leader is, and I also give a huge amount of consideration to who the candidate is in my riding, of course. And I guess I vote sort of how the mood strikes. I mean, and even at a municipal level, there have been times, maybe not as recently, but there have been times where I've been like in line at the returning station, or at the school, in the gymnasium, waiting to vote, where I've still been like, yeah, we'll see. And then in the moment, boom, there you go.
But you know what,
Eric, I know you can't even wrap your mind around that, but that's how average people.
Maybe for school board trustee.
That's what I was just going to say that, Ryan, because earlier you were like, you guys are going to be annoyed because I'm like, well, I agree with this, but I also agree with this. And I think these two things at the same time. And I make up my mind as I go into the gym to vote. That is how the majority of Albertans are thinking. Mm-hmm. Like they're saying, I like this piece from this party and I like this piece from this party. And I'm going to have to decide which thing is more important to me.
Yeah.
In answer to your question, Erica, like this might surprise you guys. I can't remember which years, but I've certainly voted Conservative. Long ago, when I lived in Lethbridge, a lot of my ecosystem was Conservative people and Conservative voters. I lived in Coaldale for a while, very conservative group of friends in Coaldale. And I was a journalist. I did not have party allegiance. I'm sure actually in multiple elections when I was younger, I voted Conservative. Now, I know, I just can't imagine a world where a Conservative Party's values would ever align with me. I know myself a lot better than that. I understand the implications of politics a lot better. I would never consider voting Conservative at this point in my life. When it comes to provincial versus federal, there are times that I find it hard to support, as I've said, the federal party. And in this next iteration, if it is a party that cannot rationally take into account the economies of the country or the position that Alberta is in, or have real discussions that is purely driven by ideology, it will be much tougher for me to support. That would be a really tough outcome for me.
Well, and I wonder if for you, it'd be interesting, Cheryl, if have you ever felt that, I mean, not animosity is totally the wrong word, but has it maybe shaped or formed your opinion on the federal NDP, the idea or the premise that it actually has hurt the success, the name association, the dual membership thing has hurt your Alberta NDP?
Yeah, I mean, my message, as we have this conversation, when I talk to other New Democrats and say, what should the path of the federal party be going forward? The West has had so much recent success. BC has done well, Alberta's done well. We have governments in Manitoba and BC. We have strong oppositions in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Look at what these pragmatic parties are doing and follow that course. Because in Alberta and in the Saskatchewan campaign that I ran last year, we did well despite the federal party. The federal party had no support there. We had to go to doors and explain to people why we were different and our different position on the economy. And I don't want to have to do that. I would love to be able to say we all believe the same thing and we're all working towards the same thing, and we absolutely understand and appreciate the economy of the prairies. I would love that. And I do think it's possible for the federal NDP to do that. Like, there is a candidate in the race right now in Heather McPherson, who is a person from Edmonton who understands the prairie economy and the contributions Alberta makes to Canada's GDP. There's also people who absolutely will not take the party down that path. So I think a lot of that remains to be determined by the outcome of the March leadership race.
How wild would it be to see the federal Liberals led by an Edmonton kid, a Calgary kid leading the Conservatives, and an Edmonton gal leading the federal NDP? Wouldn't that be wild?
Mm-hmm.
Finally, we get our moment.
Yeah.
Although I think, is it Northwest Territories? Wouldn't it? Was it Yellowknife that would probably lay claim to Mark Carney?
Probably.
But I mean, his formative years.
Yeah. Okay, so just to maybe close out today, guys, because we are coming close to the end of our time here, why don't we just talk about, like, I really appreciate, like, personally, these conversations, or any conversations I can have where Erica and I know that we disagree. And I appreciate that we are so grounded in our convictions that there's like nothing she could say that would offend me. Not everyone's in that position. So like over the holidays, how can people have these conversations? Like, how do we do our little part to restore real political discourse in Alberta?
Ryan, do you want to go first?
Well, I mean, I come at this, cards on the table, you guys. Like, I grew up in Calgary hating the Edmonton Oilers, right? Hating them. and then I move up to Edmonton. My work brings me up here. And then ultimately, through a series of events, I'm offered a job to be the Edmonton Oilers Jumbotron guy, the in-game host. Like, literally, you're paid to be the biggest Oilers fan on planet Earth. And people would say, well, how can you square that circle? That's it's in your blood. You can't, as a Flames fan, become an Oilers fan. And deep down inside, I am truly torn to this day, raising my son as an Oilers fan. So it is possible, but I'd still love to see the Flames do well. Now, some people would just spit that out of their mouth because it's lukewarm and they can't wrap their minds around the idea that you could seek to understand other perspectives or change your mind or evolve. So that's the mindset that I come at this from. I would say that I think that, we always say on Real Talk, and I've stolen it from Stephen Covey, but like, seek to understand. And that's what I always think that the key is here. And so, tell me why you feel that way, or what is your top priority? What was your number one election issue, or what struck you, or what, you're asking these questions, Cheryl, or Erica, you too, like what sort of informed your vote, or what ultimately was the tipping point? Now, that said, when someone's saying, well, it was like an attack on the rights of the vulnerable trans youth in the province, and then all of a sudden it's supercharged. Or, if Israel and Hamas is going to come up at the family dinner table, like, heaven help us. Or, do you know what I'm saying? I mean, I think a lot of these are when there's issues of like humanity and empathy and big picture stuff, it's hard for people to consider other perspectives. If someone believes that, Gaza Strip should be turned into a series of Trump casinos and the other people are calling it a genocide, like, you're not going to reach consensus at the family holiday table. And I'm not trying to be cute and I'm not trying to be funny. And I hate to come on this show and say that I don't think that it's always possible. If you're looking for actual real advice, I would say try to keep alcohol out of it. Try to seek to understand, try to keep your wits about you. And at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with walking away and reminding yourselves at the end of the day that, like, we're all just people that are out here trying to do our best.
Yeah. I think like there's two, just building on what you said, because there's two things that really stand out to me. Like, if I picture the conversations that I have, because I have so many friends that are on the other side of the political spectrum from me, is one, like, choose your partners that you want to have these conversations with. Because if you're talking to someone who can come to it from the same place as you are and wants to have a real conversation, is also, curious and seeking to understand, as you said, Ryan, it's going to be a much better conversation. Like, if I have a friend who I can really have a conversation with, whose opinion is like way different than mine, my first thought is not, oh my gosh, they're such an idiot, they're wrong, I'm going to tell them all the ways they're wrong. My first thought is like, I respect you. I think you're a really intelligent person. There must be a reason you see the world so differently than me. And like, let's take a minute to understand it. And it's that humility, I think, that helps these conversations, is to say, there must be something I don't know, rather than come to it saying, I'm going to prove that I know more than you. And also, like, for me, I'm just like, I like learning about people. I think you both do too, or we wouldn't be, in this kind of work. It's just like the answers that you get if you come to the conversation with that open mind are so, so interesting. And they help me, like, on my side of politics, be better at what I'm doing.
Yeah. I think for me, it's like the conversation isn't about me converting someone or getting them to agree with what I'm saying. It's like, where is the mutual understanding, or where do we actually align, if at all? Like you and I, Cheryl, we don't pick a lot of the stuff that happens in Alberta or in Canada that we unanimously agree on, because that doesn't make for a good podcast. It's on, So it's like, where are the contentious issues? Where are the pressure points that are the things that people would have tough times, especially with alcohol, at the Christmas dinner table? Like, how do you navigate that? I say, like, you should always be asking more questions than answering. Like, that would be an ideal goal to be able to expand your knowledge. Like, I actually think through this journey of like 2 years doing this podcast, Cheryl, I think it's actually maybe more conservative, because it's actually shed light on why, and I would think maybe the same validates your viewpoint, because it's your perspective and all you can bring is your own perspective and experience. So understanding, like, is that why you believe this, or why do you feel that way, or how is this, how you got to this conclusion, actually then makes me reflect more on, do I truly agree with this, and how does it sit? And a lot of the times it's like, yeah, because it comes back to your values and beliefs. And ultimately, there's a lot of politicians out there that I don't think are great, but there's a mutual respect because they're doing what they think is in the best interest for Alberta, for Canada, for the city, whatever it is. It's just not the one I'd pick. And so I don't know. I think ignorance, like surrounding yourself with yes people or groupthink, I don't think has ever done anyone well. So why, if you can't do it in a safe space of the kitchen table, also know your boundaries. Is another one. Like you said, no alcohol involved. I have family members that don't talk to me because I'm conservative, and they're like my next of kin. I have very tarnished relationships because of the line of work or beliefs I have. You can't make someone be okay with that if they can't remove who you are, what you believe in politically, or what party you align yourself with. Are they worth having in your life? Also a fair question.
And honestly, Erica, like that sucks, but also like you have to get to a point where you're okay with what you're okay with, and you set boundaries. Setting boundaries is so important. I also don't recommend, like, for a lot of people, you haven't seen your drunk Uncle Larry in like 2 years since, he was like hosting, COVID parties while everybody else, you know what I mean? Like these types of situations, like the holiday table is not the place to hash all this out. And it's okay to have those boundaries too. I would just say this as a bouquet to you two is one of the reasons why I think the discourse has been so successful, and why a lot of people really enjoy it, including me, is that because you guys, like, you come to it both with strong convictions. It's clear that the two of you at a personal level respect each other. You don't try to dunk on each other. You don't try to make each other look stupid. You don't hold back. You're not afraid to the zingers and the one-liners, and you guys do a great job of that. It's always an entertaining and informative listen. But at the same time, you're doing it in the right spirit. And I think that people can take the example that you've set with this show, and I think we try to set it on Real Talk as well, and apply that to their personal lives. My friend circle is so diverse. Like, we have some full-blown left-wingers, fewer than the full-blown right-wingers, and then a bunch of people in the middle that don't care about politics at all. And we've found ways to make it work.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for saying that. And thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for having us on your show all the time. And thank you for all the support that Real Talk has offered the discourse since we started this show 2 years ago.
Well, it's an honor to be on here with you. We always love when you guys are on Real Talk, and I appreciate the invitation.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, Merry Christmas to you and your family, Ryan.
Yeah. Happy holidays, Erica.
No, don't say it.
Merry Christmas,
There's
my
an
friend.
ideological
Merry
baby.
Christmas. Yeah.
I did send Christmas cards this year. They said Merry
I know.
Christmas.
It's a good photo of you
Gutsy
guys.
move.
Gutsy
Gutsy move. Yeah.
But that is our show, our last show for 2025. Please, if you haven't, please like and subscribe to our channels. You can find us on YouTube and everywhere that you get your podcasts.
The Discourse is hosted by Cheryl Oates and Erica Barudis. Follow on Instagram at The Discourse Pod. Subscribe to The Discourse on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.